I'll call this meeting to order at 7:22 p.m. Roll call. Alyssa Newsom.
Here.
Desiree Simmons.
Here.
Carl Landstrom. Lisa Volker.
Here.
John Lusk.
Remotely.
Tigwin John. Alice Elliott.
Here.
Steve Wilcoxon.
Present.
With 5 present, there is a quorum. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll support.
Are there any proposed amendments to the agenda? Okay, to approve the agenda, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion approves. Now it's time for public comment. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to address the committee. There is currently no one in person. If you are attending virtually, please indicate that you'd like to make comment by raising your hand. Amber Fellows has their hand raised. I'll allow them to speak now.
Hi all. I don't have anything particular to say except that I'm just excited for this meeting, and I thank everyone involved, especially the volunteer members of the committee that came from the CBO meeting for volunteering your time to do this. You know, this meeting was born of a year's worth of work in 2018, and this is the fruits of that work. And so really the things that you'll be working on may shape how this goes forward in the future. And I feel really confident in this group of people and just excited what comes out of it. I know that today will most likely be determining how this commission functions and operates. And I just hope that, you know, you feel confident in advocating for what you want, because we are trying to, you know, see something that is an alternative of the status quo, and staff of the city and current representatives are doing what they know, which is just, you know, the processes that have been going on forever. And while that's valuable, I don't think that you all need to repeat that same format for this commission. So I'm just excited for what you all come up with, and I just think it's really cool. So thank you.
Does anyone else on the attendees list like to make a comment? Another hand was raised and is no longer raised. I'll give you, and it's raised again. The next person that would like to make comment is George Hagenauer. I'll allow them to speak now.
Unmute. Been having lots of problems making this thing work. Sorry. My major comment or sort of curiosity is about the senior aspect of the project. We're on Social Security, and when I took a look at our Social Security and I looked at the average median income being used for the various types of subsidies, our Social Security is about 50% of the average median income. And so I think that that's one thing that needs to look at. I did a general count on what we're looking at annual subsidies, and that would be approximately enough subsidy money if it was just a straight development with no tax benefits, that would handle about 70 families in terms of various types of rental assistance. So I think that's something that you just need to look real carefully at. I mean, the other question I had is whether this is going to look at all at how well the buildings are structured for lower income people and senior citizens. From my experience with my mother especially and my brother, you need a certain amount of common areas that are open for services or for other types of things. And I don't know if that was covered in the presentation, but I think it's a interesting factor in terms of looking at how you're going to deal with how these buildings are going to work. My experience with senior housing is that because of the way our society works for elder care, people inevitably end up in living in senior housing when they probably should be in assisted living, living in senior housing when they need other types of supports. And that's probably not going to be built into this, but you need to have the flexibility in the design so you can deliver those types of services. So those are just my thoughts. I'm curious to see how the whole process works. Thank you.
Does anyone else attending virtually like to make comment? Seeing no other hands raised, we'll move on to the next section of the agenda, which is committee introductions. We can start on that side and just go around. Start with Lisa Volker.
Is there any format that I need to follow to introduce myself?
There is no format, no.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lisa Volker. I'm glad to be here. I've lived in Ypsilanti for just about 20 years now. This is not expensive, right? Cool.
Cool. Hi, nice to be here also. My name is Tegwin John. I am a pretty new resident of Ypsi. I moved here in the last year, but I grew up in the adjacent community of Ann Arbor and care very much about the ways that these communities work together, and particularly about making sure that the residents of Ypsi aren't bulldozed by Ann Arbor and the University of Michigan. And I hope that I can serve that purpose.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Newsome. I originally grew up in Adrian, but I came to live here for school, attended Eastern Michigan University, and have been in Ypsilanti ever since 2014. Currently in College Heights, off of Clark Road, off from the upcoming development. Also currently studying my master's in public administration at Eastern Michigan University, so I'm hoping to bring some of what I learned here and some of what I learned here to the program as well. And then until recently, I also worked for the Fair Housing Center of Southeast and Michigan. So I'm hoping to ensure that making sure that there are equitable outcomes for all is also present, not as a member of it, but as a, you know, I no longer work for it, but I'm focusing on school and I'm here to do what I can to help.
I'm Steve Wilcox. I'm a city council member from Ward 2 and lived in the city about 30 years. And I'm glad that you're all here.
Hello, I'm Alice. I have lived in this area most of my life. Yeah, interested to see how this goes. Hello, everyone. I'm Desiree Simmons. I live in Ward 3. I've lived in the city of Ypsilanti since December of 2014. And I am a member of Rising for Economic Democracy of Ypsi, or READY, which was a community grassroots group that worked with the city and helped to get the CBO passed. And so I'm really excited to see this in motion and to be here with y'all for this inaugural event.
John, I think it's time for you.
My turn.
Yeah.
Hi, all fellow committee members. My name is John Lusk. Sorry I couldn't attend in person, but the weather here is about 85 degrees, so it's probably better than being in Ypsilanti. I've lived in the city about 33 years. I've been on 2 city committees and still am, although we haven't met during COVID, and I'm chair of both those committees. I live next to and abut the property being in question, and it's going to be quite a change for us if it winds up being approved. but I have a lot of feelings about the project, and I'm sure that it'll come out in my comments, etc. But I hope that we are able to get something for the city from this effort. Thank you very much.
Okay, now that part of the agenda is complete, we'll move on to the next section, operating procedures for the committee. First item is approved committee structure, and this is the time that the committee will elect officers. And this is the officers that the committee would like. It's completely up to the committee. But most importantly, we do need a chair to preside over the meeting. Since we haven't approved rules of order yet, we'll follow Robert's rules in nomination, which just would require that there be a nomination followed by a vote. It does not require a second. So I'll entertain a nomination for chair of this committee. And you can self-nominate.
Is it required that there be chairs?
It is fairly necessary to have someone that will chair the meeting just to move through the agenda.
I guess, it seems to me that that could also be filled by like a facilitator, or somebody that is just gonna, like, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into the concept of like an officer.
Can I ask a question? What are the responsibilities?
Essentially, the chair for other bodies helps to set the agenda. Although this committee's mission is well outlined in the ordinance. So really that individual would just preside over the meeting. They would have no more authority than any other member. They would just preside over the meeting to help it run efficiently and get through the agenda with all tasks complete.
I personally feel Steve Wilcoxon would be an excellent person, but I don't know if he's precluded.
Councilmember Wilcoxon can be nominated. Unfortunately, since you are not present in person, you cannot
I
nominate.
know I can't. Yeah, but I would just suggest to the wider committee that he might be an excellent person. He's well organized, knows what he can and can't do. So personally, I would have nominated him if I sat there with you.
I would like to nominate Lisa to be the chair.
Okay.
Do you accept the nomination?
Sorry, Lisa.
No, that's okay. That's fair. That's fine. I would actually, can I re-nominate Steve?
Well, first, do you accept the nomination?
I would rather not,
Okay.
only because I'm guessing I'm the least qualified of all of us right now, although I have done quite a bit of research and been along for this process for a long time.
I actually would feel really great about you being chair. I think that I'm feeling less excited about, I'm feeling more excited about somebody who is a community member being chair than somebody who is existing on like one of like a council or like anything that has like a power structure personally.
Okay.
Yeah, I can also see like, I don't know if we're allowed to nominate this, but like Andrew being a great facilitator or chair, but I don't know if that's allowed or not. I think you would also make a great one.
A chair would need to be a member of the body.
Wasn't sure.
Yes, I accept.
I'll entertain any other nominations.
I'm like trying to read your eyes from across here, Lisa. I also would be fine to facilitate as well, but I also would be very happy for you to do it, so.
I'd second your nomination too.
I would also, I just didn't want to add something else to your plate, Des, because I know you
Yeah.
have a lot of stuff going on.
So.
Yeah, I'm with that too, with Des. I would like to nominate Des Ray Simmons.
Just so everyone knows, there will be a vice chair, because if Desiree cannot make a meeting, or Lisa cannot make a meeting, there will also be a vice chair, I think, right, Andrew?
It's up to the committee, but I would recommend having a vice chair just in case the chair is not able to make it.
We have our chair and our vice chair.
I'm a great second.
So for the office of chair, we have two nominations, Lisa Volker and Desiree Simmons. I will call roll for this, and when I do call your name, indicate your vote by saying the name of the individual you would like to see as chair. Alyssa Newsome,
Desiree?
Desiree Simmons.
Yes. Desiree.
No, I'm asking. Desiree Simmons.
Thank you.
Desiree.
Lisa Volker,
Desiree Simmons.
Tegwin John. Sorry.
I like both of you. I'm just gonna say Lisa, just.
Alice Elliott,
Desiree Simmons.
Steve Wilcoxon.
Let's go with Desiree.
Okay, Desiree Simmons has been elected chair, and I now hand the meeting over to the chair.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Okay. Wait, do we have to then go through the election for the vice chair then too?
Why you get it down?
Wow. All right, so now we can call for nominations for a vice chair.
I nominate Lisa Volker.
I second the nomination.
Do you accept the nomination for vice chair?
I accept.
All right. Any other nominations for vice chair?
Move to vote.
Roll call, please.
With only one nomination, a vote isn't necessary. So Lisa Volker would be elected vice chair.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Desiree.
Thank you, both of you.
All right, so then now we are looking at the committee rules of operation. So do folks have thoughts about how we would like to operate? I know we kind of were following the Robert's rules up until this point, but now we can discuss other options.
I guess given the size of this meeting, I mean, I guess the meetings can have all manner of conflict in them, but I feel less bound to Robert's rules. I've had, I don't know, personally some negative experience with them. And so would be more interested in something that revolved if not complete consensus, then like something where we're all more or less in support of it together. And I also understand that sometimes for meetings, it can be hard to get things done without the structure of Robert's rules. So this is not me proposing anything, just sort of outlining my thoughts. Sorry.
I will say that I'm not very experienced with Robert's rules, and I would prefer a more informal, well, not necessarily informal, but not specifically Robert's rules. I just wanted to vocalize that. Open to suggestions.
I'm very comfortable with Robert's rules. I have functioned in that rule a while. I'm also very comfortable with consensus. I see Robert's rules as a way of if we don't come to consensus in this group, then that means something doesn't happen. So if that means it moves to the next meeting, that's fine. It's just a matter of getting everybody on the same page and knowing who's in this group. I don't think that's going to be that difficult. So it's, you know, Robert's rules is an easy format for people to deal with, but I spent time in Quaker meetings and things like that, and so consensus.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if care either way, but when we have to notice for a new meeting for this, there's a 7-day window. We do have a 60-day window to complete our work. And so that's the only thing you should keep in mind, where we do have limited time and by scheduling other meetings, it does extend things by at least a week each time we add a new meeting, and we could run up against that 60-day time window very quickly. So I'm just pointing that out for just a reference.
I mean, is there, I'm just thinking about options of ways for the conversation to be able to flow like outside of Robert's rules, but that we could still then do votes like for decision, when we're at a decision-making point to do a vote. I also am very fond of like the fist of five, which kind of allows for discussion, and then that also allows for the group to decide that we're ready to do a vote through kind of considering these. Andrew?
So if the committee wishes, following Robert's Rules of Order, they can motion to go into a committee of the whole. And once in the committee of the whole, they're able to talk freely. Once any action is taken, a motion would need to be made to be removed from the committee of the whole, seconded, and then a voice vote to move out. And then the committee can take on any action.
This might be kind of a stupid question. Can you clarify what you mean by moving out of the committee of the whole? What is that?
Committee of the whole removes the need for the chair to call on someone to speak. So it'd be an open discussion on any item. However, a motion would need to be made, seconded, and a vote taken to enter the committee of the whole, and then same to exit it. So once that's done, you can take action. You aren't permitted to take action in the committee of the whole.
So you vote to leave the committee of the whole, and then you're kind of allowed to have a formal discussion and then, or informal discussion, and then you vote to, okay, thank you. That's really good.
With that kind of for the concern around Robert's rules, so we wouldn't have to necessarily use it to kind of be able to talk and things, would that respond to some of the concerns that folks have?
I'm open to it, but I'm also would like a little bit more clarification on the, what was it, 5 to 5?
Vista 5. Yeah, so this model would be that it's a way of it's kind of like a consensus model where if there's a topic and we are kind of talking around it, that we can get a sense of where people are based on how much agreement they have with the topic. So you can say, you know, if you're 5, for instance, then you are on board, you agree, let's move forward. But if you, for instance, put a 1, that might be like, actually, I'm not really clear about it, or I need more discussion on the topic. And so you can kind of go through that to get a sense of where people are. And then once you have a sense, once you kind of have a clear sense, you can actually move to a vote after that.
So like you're rating your level of agreement or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like exactly. It's like a level of agreement with something.
I do like that.
I will note that Open Meetings Act requires that a vote be taken. So being that this is a public meeting, you do have to vote on items.
Other thoughts?
I'm fine with anything as long as there's some sort of protected space where there's a free flow of conversation of points in it.
I think that also depends on the person determining the meeting. So even within Robert's rules, I mean, you know, there's relaxed meetings and there's more formal meetings and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to have it feel like a really informal meeting with a lot of open conversation. So, and I think, you know, I think the main thing is just for us to be clear about when we are going to move to a decision-making space, to move to a vote, and feeling like how we would decide that, you know. So I think that that's probably the main thing, is just when we would do that. And so given the idea about the committee of the whole as an example, then it would be clear, you know, we would have, when you have to make the motion to exit it, that would be when we know we're moving into a decision-making space. And I think with the fist of five, it would be the same thing of when we call for the, to get a sense of, you know, once we feel like we have enough agreement, that we would then, that would be our movement to a vote. So.
Can I make a motion that we adopt Robert's rules, pay attention to the committee as a whole, and use the fist of five within that structure to then move out of it?
I know you, also you mentioned that you were not as familiar with Robert's rules. Is there time for like a quick overview what those are, or do you just move on?
I don't want to take up time going over Robert's rules. I think that's something I can learn on my own. My only thought is that we still don't have an 8th member from my understanding, and I just want this to be accessible, especially, you know, if we do end up being able to get somebody from an adjacent community. I just, you know, want there to be accessibility, and Robert's rules can be a little intimidating. That's my only thought.
Andrew has a really great one-page cheat sheet.
Yeah, I can provide everyone a cheat sheet. But many of the commissions, they may follow Robert's rules, but it really, it's up to the chair how the meeting flows. So if the chair is fine with open conversation, usually it's not a big issue. Just as long as when there are actionable items that there is a vote taken. That's really, if everyone's comfortable with a lax version of Robert's rules, then that's fine, just as long as a vote's taken for anything that needs to have action.
Can I make a proposal? Would you?
Actually, there's a proposal on it.
Yeah.
But it did get a
It
second.
didn't get seconded, yeah.
Oh, well, maybe it's an amendment then, or a question. I don't even know what it is. I'm wondering if we can require a supermajority for our votes. That would be a little bit closer to consensus. I mean, I know that's not the same thing, but needing to get more of us on the same page in order to pass something. There are positives and negatives to that, so I wonder what everybody thinks. I don't even know numerically what that means for a group this size, so.
Currently, would it be four of the 7? Is that, I don't know what that.
4 of 7 is a regular majority.
Oh,
I don't know what the supermajority is, though, out of 7,
Like,
5.
5 out of 7.
So we do not have 7. One person let me know today that they would not be sitting on the committee.
Okay.
So we're
Okay.
down to 6.
okay. So
So it'd be
4 of 6.
4 out of 6.
Which would be a general, which would be a majority of 6 anyhow.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I guess it doesn't.
I think I'll go ahead and second the motion for Robert's rules and the 5 for this is when we move into decision making. Is that's just my motion. I hope that feels comfortable for the folks.
Okay.
Yeah, I trust that you're not gonna like run Robert's rules with like an iron fist.
I probably won't use any fence.
That's fine.
All right. So we have that proposal. How do folks feel? Do we have to do a vote for that, or?
You can open discussion for that motion. And for this, it's permitted to do a voice vote.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Is that cheat sheet readily available?
I mean, I can send it. I'd have to look it up, but I can send it to everyone tomorrow.
No, I don't have any discussion that I need.
I have
Do
that, but
Do we
that's-
want to
that's
go ahead
actually-
and do
it's
the
actually
voice
copywritten.
vote then? All
That's-
those in
that's co-goes from
favor
MML.
of using Robert's rules,
I got another one off.
within using the committee of the whole and using fist of 5 to help us decide when to move out of the committee of the whole to take an action and a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So I think with that, that if we want to move into the committee of the whole, then we could do a motion to move into that. So then we can kind of go through the rest of the meeting within that structure.
And then go into the committee of the whole.
Second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, yeah, so now we're in the committee of the whole, and now it's open discussion. The next thing that we have on our agenda here is to talk about the committee meeting schedule and meeting length. And so as Joe laid out for us, for our committee, we have a 60-day window. Does that 60 days start from today?
Or from when council formed.
So that would have been,
That'd been February 15th.
February 15th. Which then means that we're supposed to, do you already have the date for that 60 days, Joe?
No, but I can find out. real quick.
It's in my presentation.
April 13th or 14th.
You said when, 13th?
I'm gonna pull the exact date. It's like April 13th. or 14th.
Okay. So do folks have a thought in terms of how often we would want to meet as a committee? Or how many times within? I think we're supposed to meet at least twice within the 60 days. That's what's mandated in the ordinance.
I had suggested in my email that every couple of weeks, if we had 4 meetings within that time. That would work out.
I'm receptive to that as well.
More meetings, and then one question I have is there a point where we decide, okay, we're gonna have to add an extra meeting, or in terms of like a timeline for us, what if things get pushed back and there's,
The ordinance does allow for extensions either from the committee or from the developer.
okay,
That just needs to be formally submitted.
okay. Or meetings, and then traditionally, what are we here, are we like 2-hour meetings or 3-hour meetings? What is that really long?
I think that's what we're trying to decide now.
Okay.
And I think yeah, I think most like commission meetings tend to be about 2 hours.
Most council meetings, I don't know what to talk about.
I know that. I know.
I also am open to the idea of, even if like, so if we say that we were gonna be trying to meet like every other week. What do I wanna say? Well, I mean, it's probably, I guess it's probably more likely that we'll want more time than less. But I also am just thinking about like, so that we don't have to kind of commit ourselves to 4 meetings if we don't need 4. So, you know, it's probably good to give ourselves that opportunity for another meeting if necessary, but you know, not to predetermine that we're gonna definitely have 4. We're in the committee of the whole, you don't have to.
But see, I'm not on the committee. So that's where, like, if you don't mind if I ask questions, I will, but.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Okay, I want to be very respectful of the committee. So the 23rd of, it was the 22nd of February when council established the CBO committee. It was the 23rd of April is when the documentation has to be done. It's a Saturday, so it'd be probably Friday of that week. It's better to set your meetings and cancel if we get done, so we can notice everyone and get the meetings out. It's really challenging, especially with this development, to send out a public notice, just based on the time. And so our plan will be to send out to the 1,000-foot radius, all of the meetings that we'll be having. But when we have just 7 days to do that, there's no way we can get a notice out like that in 7 days, and no one will get it on time. So we want to get it out well ahead of time so everyone knows. But when you're doing a mailing of over 1,000 people, it's labor intensive, and it's also very intensive at the post office, and they can't get them all.
Mhm.
So,
Andrew?
So with the ordinance requirement that all meetings be noticed in the way that Joe just described, special meetings aren't really available to this committee. So I would schedule all the meetings that you think you might have. But in your motion, maybe provide the chair or 3 other members the ability to cancel the meeting. Because if you pass a resolution with a set meeting schedule with no ability to cancel it, then the committee would actually have to meet. And if there isn't quorum, the meeting would be called to order and then immediately adjourned. So make sure you kind of have an out clause for yourselves.
Appreciate that. So then the other question is thinking about when we would want to meet, like trying to find ourselves a day of the week to do the meetings.
This is also very tricky. So I compiled a list of all the other committees and council that meet. So Tuesdays are pretty much out completely. You can't on the 4th Wednesday, no meeting. So it's basically, here's the schedule. There's a meeting on the 4th Wednesday of the month, 4th Thursday of the month, 3rd Wednesday of the month, 2nd Monday of the month, 2nd Thursday of the month. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Tuesday, and 3rd Monday. So council chambers is filled on those dates. So Wednesdays are typically the 1st and 2nd Wednesdays are good. The 1st and 4th Mondays.
So they don't have to be all on the same day of the week, so we could just like look
Sure.
at it by week and the day.
That seems based on what Andrew just described, in which I'm already lost, it might be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be better for my schedule too, honestly. We want to try to do that. So if so looking at like, what, 2 weeks? So looking at the week of March 13th, right? That would be 2 weeks. I know we can't do the Monday or the Tuesday that week. At least. I can't do Thursday.
I will also quickly say that I don't have availability Monday evenings until not at all.
How does that Wednesday look for folks, the 16th? Does that fall, that's a 3rd Wednesday.
3rd Wednesday is already taken by another committee.
what about Thursday?
I think Doug said that you can't do Thursday.
2nd Thursday is also taken. I'm sorry, that's a 3rd Thursday.
That's the 3rd
Yeah.
Thursday.
So that would be okay.
Yeah, I know a commitment at 8.
Did we already discuss Tuesday, the 15th?
Tuesday.
That's a council meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Tuesdays are-
And that Monday is a sustainability commission meeting.
Okay.
And the Freight House is it's being used by the zoning board of appeals, so. No. Or staff.
What about the full moon, the 18th?
I'm totally open.
Is it, what day of the week is that?
Friday.
It's Friday.
That's fine.
That work?
Same time at 7 o'clock.
Yes, I think so. I guess we can decide. It just has to be after 6, I think.
7 might be better, just based on traffic.
Is John still on? Can we get a sense of whether that date would work for him?
Yeah, as far as I know, I can't think of something that wouldn't work, and I'm flexible enough that I'll just change my schedule to make it work. So if we were gonna do something, the wife and I were to do something, and we'll just say, well, no, we can't do it then. So count me as pretty open. And did I hear that the last possible date for a meeting is the 23rd of April?
That's the end of our 60 days. So the 23rd, which is a Saturday.
Yeah.
So we will be
Okay.
able to, okay. All right, so
But yeah, you just count me as fine for anything, and And I just won't be able to vote, but I appreciate the opportunity to make my views and my long history with the city and you know, available to anybody that wants to listen.
Okay, thanks. All right, so that's our first meeting.
Whether it's 6 or 7.
7. Believe.
PM, that's what you're asking.
On March 8th.
Yeah, that's, yeah. I mean, just given, I mean, would that work best for folks? I mean, we could move it earlier, but it seems that was gonna be timeline. All right, so then the 2 weeks after that is the week of March 28th. Or 27th or whatever, but.
I would prefer earlier that week if possible. I'll be out of town Wednesday through Saturday, but I could do Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, Alyssa said Tuesday, Mondays were out. So then, and then the 29th, what about that? It doesn't, I don't see a council meeting
Yeah.
that week.
29th is available.
It's one of the few Tuesdays that's available because it is a 5th Tuesday.
It's the 5th Tuesday.
Oh.
Does the 29th work for y'all?
It does for me, yes.
Yeah? Okay. All right. So then 2 weeks after that, we're at April, the week of April 10th. So we couldn't do that Monday anyway, but, and then I wouldn't be able, wait.
Is there a meeting here on Tuesday?
Yeah. I don't think there's one.
That's the second Wednesday.
Second Wednesday is available,
What's that date?
The 13th.
13th.
I have something. But
14th is wait,
the Thursday. That's
Second Thursday's taken.
second Thursday.
Do we need to do a Friday again?
that works for me. The 16th.
It's the day before the full moon, so, you know, we need to stay on a full moon schedule.
So actually, the 15th, I don't think we can do it. It's technically a government holiday. We can't have meetings on holidays.
Okay.
The Friday before Easter is a government holiday.
Yes, Good Friday.
Is it?
Really?
I don't, last I checked it was not.
Well, it's the city hall is closed.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Really?
So wait, we said not Thursday before that.
Yeah, with the second Thursday is taken. And we can't do Monday. You said we couldn't do Tuesday too?
Can't do Tuesday. Wednesday is the only day that week that will work.
Could you do it at a different time on Wednesday? Could you do it at 6 on Wednesday?
We have something that's scheduled at 6:30, but if that works for everyone else, then we have to meet that week.
I can do Mondays, it's just I can't, I have class at 6:30.
Could we meet 2 weeks back to back and skip that, like do, yeah, and then do a meeting the week of the 23rd? So it would be the April.
We would just be coming up on the
7th.
deadline.
Or we could do the week of April, so yeah, just like the week before or after to try to get it in.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, so basically every other week and then 2 weeks in a row, 3/29 and then 4/7, whatever, 6.
So what's the availability of this room on the 4th of the 8th?
Let's see,
No go.
Can't do the 5th.
4th is no go. Well, hold on, actually, 4th is available.
4th is available, 6th is, no, wait, 6th is available, so the first Wednesday, right?
Yeah, first, it's the only Wednesday is third and fourth Wednesdays are taken.
So it would have to be either Thursday, Friday. Or I could do Monday as long as it was earlier in the day, but I don't know what the availability is.
yeah, I couldn't do Monday.
Thursday, the April
7th.
what?
It's the 7th.
7th, okay, or Friday, April 8th?
Yeah.
Both of those work for me.
Same.
wait, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to say this, so we cannot do the Wednesday the 6th,
We can,
we could do Wednesday.
That's
We
fine
can't.
too.
we can do Wednesday the 6th.
Oh, okay, I thought we couldn't. Okay.
We can't do Tuesday the 5th.
Okay. How does Wednesday the 6th look for folks?
That's fine by me.
I don't need to.
Yeah, okay. So Wednesday, April 6th.
The week of the 20th, which is Passover week.
Okay, and so then we can give ourselves then that last week, which is right before our due date, so that's the week of the 18th, but we can't do, I'm guessing Monday.
The only day we can do is Thursday.
April 20.
The 21st. Does Thursday the 21st work for you all?
That works for me.
Yes.
Y'all, this, we got a Friday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday, so,
This is just a beautiful.
all right, that's 4 meetings. We did it, that was almost not painless.
Almost.
Put one of those pain rating posters in here after every motion.
All right, do we have to do anything else in terms of confirming those dates?
Well, you have to go out of committee of the whole to
Oh.
approve them. And I would actually just recommend, let's try to just have the discussion, like, right, like Andrea said, Robert's rules only as good as you decide that it is, Desiree.
Mhm.
So, so I think that most of this can be more of a discussion.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so if folks feel good about this, I get what we would, so we talked about doing the fist of 5 to decide that we're moving out, right, of the committee of the whole. And so I'll just read these dates again and see where folks feel.
I have a question.
Huh?
Do we want to give any sort of guidelines right now about meeting length? Or
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
we have like a, we want to put like a maximum on there, like, 'cause we've already been here for an hour, well, I was late, but this meeting started an hour ago. And, I mean, is 2 hours optimistic?
I think 2 hours is a minimum. For a meaningful meeting, and then I think we would probably, if you believe the science that you can have about 3 or 4 good productive hours before people start kind of losing it, I would say like 3.5 hours would be the kind of max end of what we wanted to meet for, is my immediate thoughts. I don't know what everybody else's are.
A lot of commissions get a lot of work done in 2 hours. You can move to extend the meetings.
Okay.
And typically that comes with a set time. So you can move to extend the meeting from, if we say 2 hours, you can move to extend the meeting before that time point. If we still have things we're talking about, you can move to extend the meeting until a specific time. We get this council all the time, and there's a lot of laughing about it, but sometimes it's going to take another hour to do something, so you can adjust that as well. But like you said, after 2.5 hours, people tend to go, especially this late at night.
Yeah.
We're talking 10 o'clock. I get it at 5 o'clock. So
I feel good about setting like about 2 hours and then motioning to extend if we need to. Hopefully less of this logistical will be more out of the way.
Same.
So thinking, so then for our dates, then we'll plan from 7 to 9 p.m. and extend if necessary, but we can also internally try to hold ourselves. Unless we feel, or maybe, well, anyway, we'll figure that out when we get there. Andrea, I saw that you have raised your hand. Were you asking about the length of time? Cool. So then I can read the options that we have, and then we can see how we feel like in agreement to decide to move ourselves to a voting space, okay? So we have our next meeting for Friday, March 18th from 7 to 9 p.m. Tuesday, March 29th from 7 to 9 PM. Wednesday, April 6th from 7 to 9 PM. And then Thursday, April 21st from 7 to 9 PM. And then we also said that we want, that we could put in the idea that a chair or 3 members of the committee could counsel a meeting. So we have agreement, so we could do a fist of 5. So if you agree, you do 5, or you do 1 if you don't. So let's see where we are with that. I see all 5s. So that shows a high level of agreement. So I will entertain a motion to exit the committee of the whole in order to vote.
Oh, geez, sorry. What is that? I moved to second? What is it?
Well, you're moving it. I just was naming what we're voting on.
Oh, I moved to,
Move to exit the committee of the
thank
whole.
you, move to exit the committee of the whole.
I support.
And then we vote, because this is a voice vote. All those in favor of moving out of the committee of the whole to vote on our schedule, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We are now ready to vote. So I think we need to just make an official motion to approve these dates with the possibility of the chair or 3 members to council. So I will entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the dates that you read earlier, and I think Andrew has them, otherwise I can read them in the record.
I got him.
Yeah, all right. So I move to approve those dates and the time that we have.
I second that motion.
Could the motion include that the chair or 3 members of the committee can cancel the meeting?
Yes, please, thank you.
And then are we including the link formally or?
Yes.
And who was the second on that?
Edwin John.
Thank you.
Okay, and then can we do a voice vote for this too?
Mhm.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. We have a schedule. We're just moving right along. All right, so now we can, this is the only thing that feels, I mean, I guess we could just stay here and just kind of whatever. I was just like gonna say that if we want to go back into the committee of the whole, we would have to vote ourselves back into it, but if we could just kind of go through it and not worry about it, maybe, and not give ourselves another vote so quick. All right, let's just go through that. So now we're at reviewing the documents and general discussion. So I don't know if there's anything that anybody would like to talk about from the different documents that we got around the community benefits ordinance. We have the site plan. And then also the pilot program overview and specific. So we have a few different documents we can talk about.
Is this also a time for questions for the developer as well, or does this just open conversation?
Yeah, whatever you want.
I would say if it's a question about the pilot, it would probably be a me question. If it's a question about the ordinance, it'd be a Mr. Carr question. If it's a question about the site plan, it'd be a Carr question. Rapid fire.
Okay.
I just had a question about that last table on the first page of the memorandum. It starts with because an incentive was requested, further calculations were warranted. I was just trying to figure out what the incentive meant. Is that financial gap that was talked about in one of the presentations between the amount that was given by pilot and the amount that is needed as a loan, or?
So the incentive request is kind of the triggering feature of the community benefits ordinance. And so when Mr. Brassers reached out to the city, we worked out a bunch of things, and then he officially requested a pilot. That was the incentive request.
Oh, okay. The pilot. I have a question, just since we're talking about that there, where it says, it's in the parentheses, it says, note, the length of the pilot is based on a length of affordability, and if the units are affordable for longer, the pilot would be extended until then. So that's saying that right now, these calculations are for 30 years, because that's how long it's expected to be affordable, but then after 30 years, it wouldn't be. But I think this is supposed to be an affordable housing development, right? So
the reason we had to pick a number because MISTA requires the minimum length of affordability that MISTA requires is 30 years. Like I was telling Ms. Volker before the meeting started, Mr. Brothers is an affordable housing developer. So any unit that he actually builds will be affordable for the length of the ownership. MISTA requires at least 30 years affordability. And so that's why we put it at 30 years, understanding that in 60 years, right, we don't know who's going to own what and what the incentive structure is. Just to kind of go a little bit back, no one understood what a RAD was 20 years ago. The RAD conversion is how we actually redid all of our public housing in the South Side. So it was a different tool that basically said it had to come out of public ownership into a private hand for it to pay to be redeveloped and updated. And so things change over time. And Mr. Brassers is probably the best one to explain the company and how long it is, but the pilot ordinance is for the length of affordability. And so as long as it maintains affordability to MISTA and HUD standards, the pilot would be accepted, but there's no way to know what happens in 50, 80, 100 years.
I had a question about the pilot program and its application. My research on the web shows that for Michigan, this is one of the biggest giveaways. Do you have examples of bigger giveaways than this? I saw pilots typically applied to low impact community things like solar fields. 15 years, I saw 10% pilots, and this just seems to be the maximum in every direction possible. And I'm a little curious, did the Planning Commission look into the magnitude of the sweetness of this deal compared to other pilots in the state?
So the state of Michigan only allows for very certain things, a few things to actually receive a pilot. Affordable housing is the #1 reason to receive a pilot. There are pilots that go on for 100 years, or pilots, I don't know about 10, and I don't know if Michigan allows for the pilots that you're speaking of. I can only speak to the affordable housing ones that we have in the city. And we've had them at Park Ridge, we've had them at Hamilton Crescent doesn't have one, at Chittister Place and at Town Center for over 40 years. And it's a way to maintain affordability in the city.
Yeah, I was just impressed by the fact that the city gave Habitat for Humanity 10%, which is, from my experience on my committees, is a very favorable organization. They do really good work, and they got 10, and now we're talking about 5 for somebody who's in the profit area. That seems like the city is making them more profitable. It just, I can't justify in my mind. Did they suggest the terms, or did the city offer the terms to them, or how much negotiations? I'd feel a little better if I knew the genesis, the evolution of this when we come to this, because that'll affect how I feel as a member of this committee in terms of, well, am I asking 3 million in benefits? Am I asking 30,000? I mean, the sweeter it is for them, the more I'm likely to feel, sure, let's build a train station, $2.5 million, $3 million. You know, okay, I don't know. And so I would help from the city in determining where this falls in the spectrum of what's been given before and how sweet of a deal is this really? Thank you.
So to my knowledge, Habitat for Humanity does not have any properties in the city of Ypsilanti. So I'm assuming you're talking about the Housing Commission, which has the 10% pilots. Per the community benefits ordinance and my reading of it, staff cannot negotiate with the developer on the incentive request. The developer can request the incentive and then it goes through the community benefits process. So the developer proposed a 5% pilot, and so that is what we brought to the community.
And can I just
Oh.
clarify, John, just, so as you're saying, just as you're talking about these numbers, are you saying, you're saying that the 5% is a better deal than the 10% that the Housing Commission?
That's
had?
correct. Yeah, that's twice the amount. In other words, 10% of rents collected go to the city versus 5% of the rents collected go to the city. 5% is absolute bare bottom basement. I've never seen a pilot when I searched Google in the state of Michigan. So in other words, they've given the bare bottom, the least percentage possible. And I don't know, and yet here's the city giving a 10% to something like Habitat for Humanity. Like, wow, that struck me right off the bat. The other thing is, I wonder how much did the city try to influence getting River Street as a site? I mean, here would be an opportunity to get River Street, even if it was costly in this 5% mode, back on the tax rolls. We've been struggling for 20 years with River Street, and nothing's in sight other than the Chinese one that got shot down. So I'm a little bit at a loss and would like some enlightenment.
I see that, Brad, okay, thanks, yeah.
Can you hear me? I just wanted to share a little bit of context, John. On
Can you
the,
introduce yourself? I don't think you can see you on the video.
well, John, this is Kyle Brasser, the developer speaking. I'm here. You probably can't see me because I'm sitting at a table. But anyway, I wanted to shed some light on your comment about the percentage. So in the state of Michigan, I'm aware of pilots ranging from 2% to 10%. So there are 2%, 4% pilots, 3% pilots. There are pilots that have been offered or negotiated for affordable housing developments that are well below the 5% that we requested. So I wanted to start with that. And I also, at some point, we should talk about the financial metrics of the pilot. I think it's important to explain how this incentive is provided. Some of your comments, John, I don't know if you are thinking that the city is writing us a large check at the beginning of the project. That's not how this works. And so somebody other than me can explain it better, but there is a process for this pilot. I think it should be explained at some point so everybody understands what the incentive actually is.
And just to add about Water Street, I'm assuming that's what you're speaking about, John. The Michigan State Housing and Development Authority has ruled out Water Street for all tax credit properties until the entire site is cleaned up, and they will not approve any affordable housing project on Water Street until the entire remediation for residential standards is complete.
Okay, understood. I understand about that. Okay, and I'll dig a little deeper and try to find some of those 2% pilots.
Ann Arbor has some, I believe, 4, and maybe some 2. So, and you don't have to go that far.
And it depends how long too. I mean, we'd give a 2% pilot for 6 years. I would vote for that and have it on the tax rolls in 6 years. It just, the 5 at 30 seemed to be just a bit of a sweet deal and a too sweet deal, but that's all. Okay, I'm ready to move on. Thank you.
I actually have something I would like to bring up. I don't know, can I do that? I know that we're supposed to, in the agenda as it's written, go over the community benefits ordinance first, and then the site plan, and then the pilot overview. And I know we've already approved the agenda, but I wonder if it would be helpful for our discussion to do a pilot overview first, since that's the context that we're looking at all the rest of this information in, just so that we're solid and we know what the stakes are when we're looking at the rest of this stuff.
I believe that the chair has set up a very casual meeting to where we can move between these items. And all of these items pertain to the development.
Cool.
So I can go over the memo that I sent out today, and I apologize for the lateness. Mr. Wilcox and I have been going through it, trying to make it the easiest way for it to be understood. And I will tell you that he has sent me some stuff where I sent him my first draft and he hacked it up, and then I got it back and I tried to fix it. It just taken a long time. And obviously, talking to Lisa right before this meeting, there's still a lot of questions about the memo. So I'll try to go through it the best I can. Understanding this is a weird incentive that it's a lot easier to explain like brownfield TIF than it is to explain a pilot. Okay, so just so bear with me a little bit, but
Can I ask a
Yeah.
very basic question
Yes.
first? Payment in lieu of taxes, payment made to compensated government for lost property tax revenue. That payment is coming from whom? That's coming from the state of Michigan? That's coming from you guys?
so the developer will pay the
Property ownership.
Okay,
the developer pays the city a payment in lieu of tax. So
why does the state government have to be involved at all? That's my question.
because the state is the one that issues the bonds and issues the tax credits to allow for an affordable housing development to happen. And as Mr. Barr always says, cities are creatures of the state, and so we can't do anything without the state allowing us to do it. Okay. So when Mr. Brazzers came, Kyle.
Yeah, everybody just call me out.
So when Kyle came to the city, we're talking about the development and we actually asked for more density because we understand that we have a very limited amount of area in the city and we actually need to really build on areas that we can. And so he actually obliged, and I indicated that we had lost some senior affordability in the city. And so if you could work that in and the developer did that. When he came up with a unit count and rent amounts, that's when we can actually get an amount for the state equalized value or SCV. That came to $12,270,000. And that's a rough calculation based on 2021 data, based on the rents provided. So all of this is, I don't want to say made up, but we had to come up with a number to actually come to an incentive request. Again, it's only an estimate and things can change. So based on the state equalized value and the current tax rates, the incentive, the total amount of taxes would be $1,049,848. Now, there's so many laws that come into play, and so all of these are rough and never finalized because the state, as the city's taxable value goes up, our millage rates roll down, and so everything changes every year depending on so many variables. So that's why there's a lot of if or but or estimate. There's no way we can calculate any of that. But then you look at kind of how the millage rates are dispersed. And so while the city's millage rate is for a non-homestead in 2021 or two was 85 mills, the city only collects about 40% of that. So if you look at the memo, the highlighted things are what the city collects. Everything else goes to transit, the library, the school. But the school actually doesn't receive many of those funds. It actually goes to the state and it's distributed as a per pupil thing. So many parks, natural areas, roads. Here in Clinton Metro Authority, public safety, conservation. So lots of things where it's collected, but the city collects just those 4 highlighted areas. And so out of the $1.49 million, the city would actually collect for their portion $385,000 roughly
A year.
a year. Once again, we try to break it down as easy and condense it. And so there's a couple ways that we can look at how the pilot it actually comes in. Do we count it as the entire 1.49? Do we count it as the 385, just the city's capture? And so there's a few different ways to do that. Currently, the SCV on the property is $220,000. It would be $12.27 million. So the amount that the city collects in taxes is very, very minimal compared to what it would collect on anything. But the development's not built, there's no taxes that are collected, except for what's currently there. So, then you kind of take, to calculate the pilot, you take all of the rents, which have been provided a bunch of times in 40, 60 and 40%. Add those up, back out 5% for the utilities, and that's how you get the $221,000 that the 5% pilot is requested.
Pilot, so the $221,000 is the 5%, that's what the city.
So that would be what the developer would pay the city instead of the city taxing the property, right?
With a 5% pilot, yes.
So 5% pilot means collecting 5% of it over time, the rent over time.
Yes.
Every year.
All right, okay, so initially then the first piece is 221,000 and then there's a smaller piece each year.
No, so it's 220,000 per year. However, rents, HUD allows rents to go up a little bit every year, and so it would actually go up a little bit
So
every
I was
year
gonna say, yeah, the amount would change.
Got it.
based on the calculation that HUD does.
But
So,
that's the ballpark is 221,000 per year,
Okay.
subject to inflation, basically.
so once again, the city is paying, and the city pays none, it's just what the developer would pay the city for that development.
So so the city would be getting $164,000 less than it would if we were collecting taxes, and there would be no money going to the county, the buses, the states, WCC, the library, or anything else.
Correct.
So we can ask you guys to give us a lot of money and nice facilities to make up for that. Maybe. Can't.
We can talk more about that, but just to start, the purpose of requesting the pilot is because without the pilot, the development isn't financially feasible. So that's one of the reasons that I want to make sure we talk about the mechanics, because at the last meeting, I heard several comments of, well, if we're going to give the developer X million dollars, then they can invest those X million dollars in several things in the community. First of all, we aren't, like I said earlier, we aren't actually receiving a check up front, but further, the request for the financial assistance is to make the project financially feasible. So if we start to say, well, they can pay another $500,000 for something else that's not related to the project, that's $500,000 that hasn't gone into the pilot request yet that we would have to then factor in the pilot request. Does that make sense?
So I thought are you guys getting bonds from the state?
We are receiving, well, we're applying for tax exempt bonds from the state of Michigan, but that's not, we're financing it likely through a private lender or Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, like a government lending agency.
So are you not expecting to get those tax-free bonds from the state of Michigan? Or is that part of your expectation? And then also,
The tax-free bonds, it's just a vehicle for getting a loan. That's not free money.
yes,
It's just a vehicle for getting like a construction loan to build a project. I am expecting to get those, yes.
that would be, so that tax-free bond functions instead of you guys having a massive amount of startup capital.
No,
to-
I probably should have started back a couple steps. That's the only vehicle to receive the tax credits that make a development like this feasible. It's a tax code thing. You have to apply for tax exempt bonds, but it's not I would think of it as just when we finance the project with a traditional construction loan, that you go to a lender and you say, we need to borrow X million dollars because we have to build this building, and then it's going to be up, it's going to rent for this much and it will operate for this much, and they'll say, okay, based on that, we'll give you X. It's financed with that, and then it's financed with tax credits, which is a form of cash that gets invested into the project.
So the tax credit is a form of cash.
It gets sold to an investor. An investor
Like
buys
future
tax credit.
speculation.
So it's, yeah, an investor buys a tax credit and that provides cash.
Can I ask a question in a different direction entirely? But I want to make sure first to not leave this in case there's any more questions about this specifically for the moment. Okay. Leasing this on page 12 of 27 of the packet. Underneath the 845 West Clark Road Senior Apartment. I guess it's on both maybe. There's an indication where it says leasing offices are located on the first floor of the building. I apologize if this is stated somewhere obvious, but can you explain to me what the leasing office / management company setup will be from your perspective?
Sure. So there, at each of these two projects, at the family and at the senior, there will be an office setup, which is essentially a couple of offices where you'll have a leasing manager who's somebody who works with prospective residents day in and day out to sign leases and to manage paperwork and things like that that happen with them. There will be a community manager. So it'll be a full-time leasing agent, a full-time community manager, full-time maintenance, and then likely a part-time leasing agent and or community manager. So there will be multiple full-time staff people as well as an additional part-time to cover the operations of the project.
Will there only be one full-time grounds management staff? Is that what you said?
There will likely be one full-time per project. Because grounds, when we say grounds, so
I guess you said,
typically,
I'm sorry, I
maintenance.
misspoke what your word, you said maintenance manager.
yeah, maintenance. So you'll have a maintenance person.
I didn't mean ground, but only one single full-time maintenance person?
Likely, yeah.
And so does the leasing office agent work for? Do they work for Lincoln Avenue Capital or?
They work for the property management company, and in this case, we aren't the property manager, we're an owner.
Who
So
are-
we hire a property management company.
Do you know who that is yet?
We don't have a signed management agreement. It would likely be KMG Prestige, which is a local, Michigan property management company. They manage a lot of projects with affordability components. The compliance is pretty complex when it comes to the paperwork,
Right.
income qualification verification, and the work that they have to keep. So you want somebody who has a lot of experience in that. And my company has a working relationship with KMG, so I think there's a good chance we will use that.
Okay.
I guess a question, just because we're talking about like the staffing. I mean, so, I don't know, I'm guessing, I don't know where KMG is kind of based out of or whatever, but one of the things too, as we get into the part thinking about the benefits, thinking about the jobs, the potential like for local hiring, I know is something that was important too with the ordinance. So what kind of things are around like staffing, and even if there's a property management company that's not based in Ipsy, in terms of thinking about who's going to actually be in these positions?
Typically, all of the staffing positions that I just mentioned, the property manager, the leasing agent, the maintenance, I'll say like it's a part-time kind of roving person. When I say part-time, they could handle maintenance, grounds, other things like that. All of those positions are hired for specifically at the project. So they don't exist, those people aren't employed by the management company right now, but they would be in the future. And that's, I think, a really good suggestion, kind of digging into, could those individuals be local, or could there be a target number of those individuals that could come from a local area?
KMG works for the Housing Commission, and I know that they do a lot of targeted hiring and selection from the community as much as they can. I know it's always challenging to find this right employee for the right job, and with leasing, it's a whole other ballgame.
It's what we prefer to have. You prefer to have people from the local community managing projects in the local community. It's hard to require it because you can't always find those people, but
Quick question, is this KMG Prestige?
yes.
Okay.
I'm assuming.
That's correct.
Yeah, hiring local is like, I don't know, it's always worth thinking about, but there's also plenty of like people that are terrible property managers locally, so personally, that's important to me.
I would say that our local property management companies would not have the expertise to handle one of these properties. And I think I have a feeling I know who you are speaking with, but they don't handle the proper paperwork as these developments.
Yeah, cool.
Can I just say one other thing about property management? I think this is something we should talk a lot about, but I would, when talking about sort of quality of managers, I would caution this group. I have never found a property manager that like everybody likes.
Yeah.
Property management's a difficult profession. Frankly, it's pretty thankless, and most people get on Google and say what they don't like about the property manager. And some of the best, in my experience, property managements that I've worked with in the past have like 2-star reviews on average on Google. So not that this committee would use Google, but I just think about that context. What if we do start talking about property managers and who they are? You can find a lot of things that upset residents say about them.
The other thing I'm thinking about too, y'all, is just, I think I hear this a lot just in general about like how hard it is to find local folk, find people who have certain skill sets. And so it just makes me think about like job training and like what kind of development is there for folks to be able to do that, especially if there's going to be other kind of developments that are going to be happening like this, that will be bringing in these kind of positions. So that might be something to think about too, just some kind of noting that.
My question is KMG, this is who is fixed as the property management?
We haven't hired, we don't have a contract with them, but they're likely to be the property manager. So typically in a project like this, I'm engaging with a property manager from the very inception. There's a lot that goes into this. So I'm talking with them about plans. We need to find, especially right now, we need to find somebody early on and know they're going to have availability to manage your project. So we've had conversations. I would say that they definitely are planning on managing it, but we don't have a actual relationship with them at this point. So they are not certainly.
Go ahead. I just have I can wait too. I have a transit stop question, but if we can still go on this line and then I can bring that up.
Then you should ask that question first.
I have a tax clarification question with the pilot for the transit stop. A new bus stop is proposed between the two sites on Green Road, close to the intersection with Clark Road. Bus stop will allow the required off-street parking of both sites to be reduced. The proposed reduction in parking is 9%. So I'm sorry, page 12 of the 27 page. Yep, underneath 945 West Clark, the project narrative. The second bold is transit stop. I'm curious because someone asked a question earlier about a pilot in lieu of taxes. Does that mean that there won't be tax money that would have gone to public transportation won't go to public transportation? And if that's true, is it realistic to expect another bus stop without funding for that? Or am I missing something?
Well, transit is funded in a very many hot way. And so the transit authorities look for where the people are living. They want to service people who will use their services. And so even though they wouldn't be collecting the taxes on this development, they would be getting the ridership numbers either. And so their numbers are how they get money from the state and federal government, as well as the ridership fees. And so there's many ways that a transit authority will get it. And so they won't commit to a stop until development is built.
Sure. I want to clarify something. The transit stop that's talked about in your report is a stop that we are proposing to build as part of this development. Right. So that comes out of our construction budget.
I know, but I'm asking because in order to maintain it and have bus drivers, the AATA in the past several years, we've had a lot of up and downs with what's possible and not possible. And I'm all for AAT. It's not them, but we have had trouble as a community maintaining routes. So I just want to know how realistic that is. It's not something that we have to get to today, but
we've submitted, I guess you could call it an application. It's not quite that formal, but we have submitted our site plans to them.
AATA is them?
Yeah, the Ann Arbor Area Transit Authority. And they are working through it right now. They're reviewing right now.
Okay.
And as it pertains to the site plan, that was to get a parking reduction based on the city's parking requirements, which there's a lot of people who think that this site is overparked. But this actually doesn't meet the requirements of the city's ordinance, so they have to request a reduction based on having a transit stop. So
there's two features of this. There's that request of the reduction. Is that going to be possible? And then there's also the are the stops approved eventually as well?
and I would say that I think the stop is much more feasible than some might think, based on the density of this unit and based on the density of the neighboring
Existing.
areas. And if anything, this could actually help get a bus to run through that area, which right now they have to walk to the forge to get to.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I'm just looking at this little drawing that we have here.
I have it pulled up on the screens.
Well, do you have any of your plans currently to have like a bus shelter, or would you just have a little concrete pad with a bench?
What we would like to do is put a stop and shelter that's close to, you see the little north-south connection road that goes between the two?
I see where the bus stop label is.
Yeah, this is an example of what's still getting worked on with AATA. I would want it to be closer to Clark Road, but regardless, I guess it's accessible there. Bench and shelter. Shelter means some sort of covering so that people can stand and be out of the weather.
Yeah.
It's not, it's probably as wide as this table, as long as this table, if you will, like the bench, and there's a shelter built over the top of it.
Yes, people have somewhere to sit down, out of the rain, out of the sun.
Correct.
Thank you.
I have a question of whether this could be considered a benefit in the context of this meeting. It's already proposed in the development, but they don't have to do it. So is that something that people would be willing to consider as a community benefit?
Well, I'm seeing on here, like, they have a list of what they have as public benefits, and this is one of those things. So on that same page that Lisa's had us on, they list what they see as like the public benefits on there, which includes 100% affordable housing for 340 units, high density housing versus low density, the green road extension, work preservation of existing trees, West Clark Road extension, 50-foot conservation easement, pedestrian connection, sidewalks along entire site in Clark Road, public utility improvements, and then the proposed new bus stop.
So these are the public benefits proposed for the planned unit development, although it does carry over to this process, but there are multiple things that require public benefits.
I see, thank you.
Can I ask another question? What is meant by public utility improvements?
So right now, that's a good question. Right now, if you're all looking at the site plan, I would put it up here and refer to it if I could.
Page 12 on the packet, third column.
Can you put it up on the screen?
No, it's a building. It's like the aerial view of the site. Yeah, that one, yeah. So
It's the next
top
page.
of page
Oh,
13.
sorry, yeah, it's both pages. The benefits are listed on page 12, and then we're referencing the map on page 13.
Get it up on the screen. At the top of the page is Clark Road. That's the road that runs east-west. Right now, today, that's a dirt road. It's not paved. And as part of this development, we'll pave it. In addition, because it's
Said 16?
13. In addition, under many city streets run all kinds of public utilities, sanitary sewer, which is like when you flush your toilet, where does the water go? Storm sewer, when it rains, where does that water go? Sometimes they're gas and electric as well. There are no public utilities under any stretch of Clark over here. And they terminate like closer to LaForge where the main intersection is. It's expensive to build that amount of utility. And even actually the apartment communities to the south of this that are off plan to the bottom of the page, those are run off of, I don't fully understand it, but it's some kind of private utility that was put in a long time ago. So those aren't public either. So this little area is kind of on its own island without utility access. And in long-term planning, it's a huge benefit to have public utilities run that length of Clark Road, because in the future, that means those utilities are further extended and more accessible for anything else that may want to be developed in the future. So it's a future improvement, a future proofing kind of a mechanism. And that's an extraordinary cost in this development that you don't always see.
Could I make a comment?
Please.
We are the only property in the city of Ypsilanti that could ever get any benefit from it. There is no property in the city beyond. The city will not benefit by having utilities run down there. The only one, maybe the I Brothers in Superior Township on the north side, if they could get tied into it, but there is no city benefit for extending those utilities down that road.
John, I would say that if the apartment communities to the south of this site off plan to the bottom were ever to redevelop, there would be benefit there. And
I thought south of there was the river. Hello.
Directly, but like you see where Green Road is kind of dotted in there, there's two different apartment communities that are.
Yeah, it's Arbor One.
Arbor One is down there, and then I'm blanking on the other one.
Market Riverview.
Yeah.
But it won't increase taxes. New development won't happen. In other words, I'm talking about benefit to the city. If those places hook onto it, then Yucca gets it. It won't cause more taxable base, a higher taxable base for the city. I can't understand that argument.
Would, and cities will also tell you that they do expand their board. I'm not going to begin to speculate how the city of Ypsilanti could grow in the future, but it could expand.
Not per the state of Michigan. We can't.
There's no, okay, well, then I misunderstood something that somebody told me, but regardless, I was thinking more about the projects to the south. If those were to redevelop down the road, that would be that's an improvement event. That's a future tax event. So respectfully, I think there's benefit in the utilities that we're providing.
In
I just
terms
don't
of,
understand.
sorry, John, go ahead. Were you finished?
No, it's just what I'm saying is all the properties used up in the city, you'll never build over in Superior Township. You know, they have anyways. So I was offered when I built my house, it was suggested that I pay Yucca at that time, we're talking 33 years ago, $100,000. That probably maps into about $600,000 or $700,000 today to bring the sewer down there. And then I could collect from people as they built. Well, nobody built. So I'm glad that I put in a drain system and, you know, I'm self-sufficient. So I'm the only property that's left in the city. So it's, and south of there's the river. So that's it. And it doesn't help if it's built up. It doesn't help the city. That'll never happen. So thank you. That's my comment.
In terms of, just a second, just because I was looking at this clock here, which is not the right time, but it's 8:55. So I just wanted to, if we wanted, to keep talking, we just have to motion to extend and to think about what that would mean. I know we're in the midst of a conversation, but if we motion now, then we can just keep it going.
I move to extend till 9:30.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Go ahead. Megan, what are you about to have? Think about it.
sorry, I apologize. I just have a lot of questions about the, also, I would love to hear from you about the impact on the watershed. So in hearing you think about, when I was looking at the USGS maps of that area, it is one of like, it butts up to the conservation district areas that are right there, which is, I think, is part of John's point about development that would go beyond that, because a good part of that Superior Township is conservation. But besides that, I am interested in what you all have talked about in terms of stormwater management and damage to the, like thinking about runoff.
So we have multiple features on this development that address stormwater runoff or stormwater management. And we are, I will say that the stormwater guidelines that are in place for any new development, be it through the city, who I believe adopted Washtenaw County's standards, but I'm not positive and I'm not a civil engineer, so I'm not 100% sure on that. But regardless, what I was going to say was the baseline is relatively stringent for communities and municipalities that I've dealt with before, as far as what they require, just from baseline. So I think you all should know that. You're not starting from a point that's it's above standard. And as a result, we're doing multiple things here to address the stormwater runoff. For starters, if you go back to your site plan, I think it's easiest, and you probably have a black and white site plan, but there are two sort of, well, actually they're labeled stormwater retention. So we have created two above ground stormwater retention ponds on the development. On the senior building, which is more like the H-shaped building, it's towards the bottom of your page, which is the back of the site. And this site, if you go out there, you don't really realize it, but it slopes quite a bit from north to south and also from east to west. That's the general direction of where the river is the southwest, southwest portion of the site. So we've positioned stormwater retention ponds there. The idea being when it rains and rain falls on top of the building, which then goes down through a gutter system, or when it lands on the existing grass or it lands on pavement, it's going to naturally shed towards those two ponds for starters. Now this is all as calculated by our civil engineers. So they've sized those ponds to receive an appropriate amount of stormwater in the event of these runoff events. In addition, what's not called out on this plan, but is in a more detailed set of civil plans, in the general area where it says surface parking referred to civil, if you look kind of the upper left corner comments,
Got it.
monument sign, I know it says surface parking referred to civil. In that general area of the surface parking lot, we're going to be constructing a permeable pavement. So it will be a pavement that allows water to infiltrate through it, as opposed to normal pavement where water she drains off the top. And then underneath that pavement is what we call a stormwater retention basin. It's a large concrete tank that water flows into, and it's released at a controlled rate, which means that it sits in that tank, and over a period of time, it's released into the stormwater retention system so as not to overwhelm the pipes, so as not to release too much water into the system. So those are the factors that we've implemented. And we've also done everything we can to minimize the amount of paving. There is a lot of paving, and there are large buildings on the site, so a lot of what was grass is no longer. But we've tried it wherever we can to maintain natural services that also leads to water retention as opposed to water drain.
And to just inform Kyle and everyone, the city, well, we are not under the county water resources commissioner because we're a city, so it's a little different. And this isn't a drain. We do follow the water resources commissioner guidelines, which is, I actually believe, the most strict in the state for runoff and stormwater management. So, just an FYI.
A quick follow-up question to that, which is that I think that's, I did not know y'all were planning to do the permeable pavement retention basin situation, which is really cool. That's exciting. I was curious if you're, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, which is totally fine, because I know you're not an engineer, but if the rainwater prediction patterns or whatever you're using to predict the amount, the size of the basin that y'all will need, does that take into account the increased precipitation and climate change over the next like 10, 20 years? And I'll just start with that. I know it's
Okay, that's a really good question.
I might add another thing. I've had discussions with Kyle, and one of my problems was that they designed the property as a micro. Here's the property, and at the time, and maybe he took my advice and looked into it, but across the street in higher altitude, is an 800-pound gorilla, the state. It's the tower for Eastern Michigan. And nobody can tell it how much water it can dump, and it dumps a lot. It comes down that road from that hill and comes across its property onto the other property. There's a lot of runoff. That is the highest part of the county. That's why the TV towers are there, cell towers, and the eastern tower. And of course, the lower part is just less than a half-mile away in the river. So there's an incredible, and my basement can attest to this, incredible amount of water that's flowing. And I really hope that they look at the entire area and the fact that they cannot control the state's water dumping on that property, and they have to do something, or they'll pass it off to me, and my basement will be a mess. So thank you.
I'll start with Alice's question, which is a really good one about taking into account projected increase in rain levels due to climate change. I admittedly don't know the answer. My assumption is that engineering standards today look at historic numbers and they don't have a projection forward looking. So I'm going to guess that those are typically what I recall having heard in other similar projects is things like this are based on, they size things based on the 100-year flood event. So it's not like they don't size them based on anything that's never happened. It's not like they size them based on a dry year, but they take into account what could happen or what has happened historically, but they don't have some projection for something larger. Now, when they say the 100-year flood event, I don't know what that means as far as, does that mean that these retention ponds are going to be brimming over and that the stormwater detention basin is going to be full? I can certainly follow up on that if you'd like. I know that they do take historical data into account, and I don't know how they apply.
Yeah, my concern with that would be that is the way, sorry, I'm like an ecologist, so I have feelings about this, but that is the way that most engineers do things. My understanding is using 100-year flood events, but those are happening like every 2 years now is the thing. And so we can't really, and that's part of the reason that so many places have just been completely flooded out is because we are now using 100-year flood projections that are just happening constantly. And so that would be, I would be worried about the condition of your poor stormwater basins if you were to base them off of those projections.
We have layered some additional litigation,
Yeah.
So it's not like we're just taking one.
No, I figured, like, I'm sure engineers are working, it's hard. And the follow-up question that I had to that was, because like you said, the site is on a slope and it's, from my understanding, just from having been in that area, it's on a pretty, I guess it's not, yeah, maybe this is, I think I'll look at that map again. You guys don't, is the western end of the site like abutting the river, or is there like a chunk of forest in there?
The western end of the site is abutting John's property.
Oh, okay.
So the straight up and down line.
Yeah, okay. Never
To the
mind.
west of that is John's, and then there's a kind of a diagonal line just below
Gotcha.
that. That's the river.
Yeah, cool. I was, I guess, a little concerned initially because of the amount of erosion that could happen, especially if there is like increased rain, that because of climate change that is not being accounted for. Which, yeah, I can see now why John is kind of concerned about that. But I can see that also y'all are leaving like some trees between you all and the river, just because I know that is a really steep slope that goes right to the river. Oh, cool. Oh, yeah, that's a good chunk of trees. Yeah.
John's property.
But down there is a chunk of trees.
Yeah.
I was worried about erosion from like close proximity of buildings with like not many trees in the way, that looks like y'all are.
And that's one of the reasons that we've positioned the detention basins.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's.
And that underground tank, everything is to the west of the respective project, with the idea being that's the direction the water's going to flow. So that's where we're gonna capture it. We're not gonna put it somewhere where it's not going to be as effective. And again, that's all calculated by the engineers. This will still go through a formal city engineering process, which is more detailed than it has been so far. But our civil engineers have designed this based on you know the county requirements for starters, and then based on some additional considerations. John, when we talked before, what I explained was that the civil engineers do take into account runoff from surrounding properties. I don't know what the exact calculation is or how they do it, but they don't design this in a vacuum.
But I don't think there's a way for this project to calculate for EMU's runoff into the river. There's just not a way. That's far too far away.
I mean, you don't. Probably not, but they do take into account the fact that there are neighboring properties, the grade of some neighboring properties, things like that. So I don't know what. I guess I'll leave it there.
I have a broad question about this process. So do you have this list of community benefits, which you've given us here? On 12. The 100% affordable housing, you read this list before, high density housing versus low density. I guess this being high density should be a benefit. Green road extension, preservation of trees, park road extension, etc. So if we were to, as a committee, decide that we would like more additional benefits, how would that affect this process going forward? Would that be something that then you would turn around and request additional tax incentives?
It would depend entirely on what the benefits are that are being requested.
Okay, I have an interest in not just accepting the benefits that you've listed here, because this is the first time that this CBO has occurred, and I don't think that that's a very helpful precedent to set for the community to just agree to the list of benefits as it exists.
I think these are, just to make a quick clarification, are you doing the public benefits on page 12?
Yeah, are those the community benefits that you propose?
You identified those as benefits pre-existing already to the public who's part of the community of the development.
The intention of listing those was twofold. One was so there are two processes that are happening right now. This site plan has been presented to your planning commission. And so it's called a land use application or site plan review. Separately, there's a community benefits process that we're all taking part in right now. For the planning commission process, we listed, I think one of the questions is, what community benefits does the project present? That is the list that was taken off our planning commission application. That said, I do think some of those cross over into this CBO discussion as other benefits of the project. But that wasn't intended. I didn't provide that list as though to say like, these are the benefits, take it or leave it. That's a take it from our site plan application.
Gotcha.
And per the CBO process, this committee gets all of the documentation that we have.
Yeah.
So that's why you received the site plan application.
Yeah. And the meeting, the minutes from the
Yes.
meeting in February. Cool.
When there's time, I have a couple of questions.
Go for it.
Okay, so a few questions. Has Huron River Watershed, also the nonprofit, have they been involved at all or indicated any interest in having conversation? A little out of the loop on that. Okay.
I can answer that question.
Yeah.
I meet with them on a weekly basis, and they have decided to leave that to us.
Leave it to us. In terms of assessing it or involving them?
Us being the city.
Involving them.
Yeah.
So I posed the questions to them because I'm dealing with them for the
Mhm.
adjacent, to this, right?
Uh-huh.
And posed to them that this is happening, whether they want to be involved, if they said they would stand back, they would be Alice is bringing up Alice and Lisa are bringing up the same issues I brought it up with power before.
Mhm.
The same issues that they would. So they're sitting back.
Okay.
And if there's any expertise that needs to be, that we need them for, they're willing to help, but they're. So they would sit back.
Okay, I'm just curious because just as much input from them as possible would be appreciated. The second question I have is regardless of how well not wastewater, stormwater is managed, how well flooding is managed, things like that, it seems like it tends to be inevitable that we get the 100-year storm and we end up with residents that are displaced, that need to be put somewhere else, that end up with water damage in their apartments, especially with these low income properties, and then they end up living with mold and water damage in their apartments. Is when you run into issues like that, is that going to be KMG that is gonna like whatever management company you hire, is that their purview, is that deferred to them?
Those types of events are managed essentially in partnership between ownership and the management company. The management company has to coordinate with residents. If someone has to be moved out of an apartment because of damage, the community manager knows everybody. They have the relationships. They know where people, how to get a hold of them, all those things. So the property manager has to be out front, but ownership can provide direction. Ownership can provide. Ownership carries the insurance, for example. It would be our insurance policy that we have to work through to get those, to manage those claims. So it's a collaborative effort.
Okay. The reason I asked that question is just because I'm personally aware that KMG manages a number of properties in the area. This includes what I looked up: Cranbrook Tower, Parkway Meadows, Lincolnshire Village Apartments, Canton, Cranbrook, and Parkway being in Ann Arbor, and then Courthouse Square in Ann Arbor. Personally, I just want to be able to explore other options for management companies just because of what I know about how KMG has managed Courthouse Square particularly, and that was a low income senior living property, and then it started resulting in a high amount of displacement. From what I understand of the situation of tenants that had been there for decades. This was covered by MLive, and I wanted to take a look at the article. So if you saw me fussing, I was just trying to remember that. So that is just something that I wanted to express, is that there either needs to be a more transparent process about how KMG is going to manage this kind of problem that it runs into, or there just needs to be a different management company, in my opinion. I don't know, I'm on a committee, but that is just information that I have, and it makes me wary of, regardless of how well the stormwater is managed, how well this happens, you can't avoid flooding in units, you can't avoid damaged parking lots, the ability to access, drive across the street, get to your job. Especially when you have senior citizens that can get stuck there, power goes out, they can't, keep their insulin refrigerated. That's an ongoing issue as heat prices rise up. And when that happens, the recourse that tenants have is through these management companies. And when these management companies don't offer recourse, and we have people who are then have to go to, say, legal services of South Central Michigan, and it becomes this huge process of who is accountable taking care of these residents when these issues come up. So that is something that I'm deeply concerned about when it comes to the history of this specific management property and how everything has been playing out over at Courthouse Square in Ann Arbor, from what I've heard of that situation, because the rent has just been out of control and what was supposed to be an affordable senior living property. So I don't know if I'm going off the handle on that, but that is something that I just wanted everybody else to also be aware of and to have discussions about, is there an alternative?
I just wanted to also basically agree with you and say that I don't think you're going off the handle, and B, the reason that a lot of people have strong opinions about property managers and maybe take to Google to write negative reviews is because the property managers have so much power in the situation. So even the best property manager in existence is going to be dealing with folks that have been just completely mistreated, completely abused by property managers from years, decades past. And so it makes sense that I think that a lot of people would have feelings about that. I don't know if it's a possibility. Can we
have some sort of discussion with current KMG tenants that are at adjacent properties, say, hey, how do you feel about these? Your current managers, do you think that, I don't know, that's just something I've only done the smallest amount of tenant organizing, but I would like to get some more information from them about how they feel about this property manager continuing to acquire more control of the area. And what we can do at the very least to create more transparency and accountability if they are going to be the ones to manage this property.
Thank you very much, Krista. Yeah, I just wanted to second that, that if this is a company that has a history of mistreating their low-income senior tenants in the area, then giving them another parcel of affordable senior housing would only increase their ability to do so and decrease the amount of options that our community members have. So thank you for bringing that forward to this, because that's, I mean, yeah, we can do all the best community benefit planning we can possibly do here, but if the people who are running this building aren't committed to benefiting the community, then that's it.
Can I ask a question about being a member of one of these two developments? Like if I moved in there and relative to this conversation, what do I have? Because it's like capital A affordable housing and it's 100% that way, which is great. But in terms of like the tenant relations, I know there's a community manager, but like as a community, what do they decide about together? As residents who live there, like what might are there any governance things or?
So typically, in apartment housing like this, there's not like resident governance.
Okay.
There will be like resident groups that people will form, there will be resident activities and things like that, but there's not resident governance that takes place.
Okay. Would that be something that we would have influence over as a benefit to the community, being the community of people living there?
I'm happy to hear if you have suggestions. I'm not sure what it is you might suggest, but I'm open to hearing suggestions. And it's our goal to make sure that everybody who lives there has a great place to live as well. So I think we're aligned there. There's absolutely no part of me that hears about any poor living conditions and things like, oh, that's just part of the, like, that is absolutely not just part of the gig. We take a lot of pride in managing, overseeing that our properties are managed very well.
Do you have a lot of experience going through community benefits ordinance processes?
This is an incredibly unique process. I don't know if, I'm sure some of you know that, but this specific process I've never gone through before. I've done tons of public outreach and public meetings, community meetings, but this community benefits ordinance is entirely new to me. And I think it is maybe to everybody here.
How many affordable properties have you guys developed?
Well, as a company, we talk about units, but like this is 300 units.
Mm-hmm.
And so we own about 15,000 apartment units across the country. And that equates to, I'm just trying to think, I mean, several hundred apartment buildings across the country.
Do you know if any of them have gone through community benefit and ordinance processes?
They have, again, I don't think any of them have gone through a process quite like this. There are varying degrees of this all across the development spectrum. So if oftentimes there's a neighborhood engagement requirement, you have to meet with a neighborhood organization 1 or 2 or 3 times. And sometimes that neighborhood organization I've done developments where they actually have a vote in what the city does, and I've done other ones where they don't. But I have not done this specific process as well.
Would you say that you're excited to work together to figure out new and better ways to serve people who live in the properties that you're developing?
I am.
Cool.
I just want to bring up, so it's 9:21. And so I was just thinking about, we obviously have some more time, but one of the things I was thinking of wanting to ask y'all is your thoughts on what we want to cover for our next meeting, so that we can kind of just think about what our agenda would be for that. And also whether we can think about like the questions and things that we have, or we want to discuss, how we might group it, so if there's things that we might not get to tonight, but that we want to make sure we cover in our next meeting.
Like a parking lot for questions kind of?
Yeah, so we can start that, then that way we can kind of capture where our thoughts are now, but then also we can all prepare for it too. But then also think about what things we know we want to try to maybe address. Like I know, like I would like to, the next meeting kind of talk about the community benefits and like the things that came up in the meeting that we had, and to spend some time talking about those things in the next meeting. And I just want to see what other things folks want, so that we can think about that for the agenda.
The two biggest things I was hearing folks talk most about today was the sort of property manager / general power structure, like of what's going on at this development, and how to ensure that either residents have some way of addressing those concerns / us ensuring that whoever is in their property management is not that takes good care of the property and their residents. The other thing I was hearing stuff about was watershed impacts and stormwater management. And one thing that I know folks talked about a lot at other meetings that I don't think I've brought up much tonight was the area median income way of determining rents, and whether or not that can be like what alternatives to that could look like, or not alternatives necessarily, but how to make that more reflective of the incomes of Ypsilanti as a whole. We even heard from a gentleman on public comment tonight about that, so it feels, for me at least, important to talk about. But people want to.
I would definitely like to next meeting talk more about the comments raised by George earlier about making sure that the senior project has actual spatial design considerations to serve seniors, and what that looks like to build a place where people can age in place gracefully and happily. There are a lot of community benefits that I think I would like to see discussed. Haven't heard anything about who you would be paying to do this development. If you're interested in hiring people locally to do that work, I know that's a possible community benefit, but yeah, I really liked George's comments earlier. I just wanted to make sure that we get to that.
Also, just Kyle, as you're doing notes, like just because you were talking about the watershed question and stormwater, do you think that you'd be able to talk to the engineers and get information about how they calculated the retention pools, and also like if there are measures of thinking about how to do that for planning? Because I know we already have some folks in the county have already kind of determined, looking at what the expected water, like rainwater, like would increase here. And we're definitely
40% precipitation increase in the last 50 years, and just in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, so we're definitely in one of those areas where we can expect that. So is that something that you could?
Yeah, I can certainly talk with the siblings.
Yeah, can I make a comment?
Yeah.
We've actually talked with the drain commissioner, and it turns out that this whole thing that's going to happen is going to be the county road commission, and the drain commissioner may or may not get involved, even though it turns out they're responsible for the river. There's some little glitch here that if they're not going to dump in the river, then they don't get involved. So it's really, this whole topic is going to be resolved at the county road commission level. I have a query into them. So I'm in the queue list, so that once the permit is requested, and they can't do anything until the developer requests the permit. And at that time, there will be additional public hearings where input can be received. And this discussion of, take the whole area around it, just don't isolate this. And also, is this land going to handle enough such that residents aren't going to, or the neighbors aren't going to get flooded out? So just to help the committee maybe focus on the areas that they can have some impact on, because it's a big impact for me, it's really going to be the county road commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Are you saying the county road commission is handling all of that drainage area or just the road?
It is handling, that's a tricky question. It is handling the road, its improvement, and what they do with the stormwater that hits the road. So, and that of course is, we then hope, of course, that the rain that falls on the property can be managed properly. But at least that's part of the issue, is the road and what it may contribute to the property, especially the property north of there, where it's a different township. It's not even under the Washtenaw County's purview to handle. That's the eastern tower. And so you're right in the sense that it doesn't handle the whole water issue, but it will handle the water issue of any additional water coming in from the roadside. So that it hopefully it will then focus totally on, can that piece of property sustain a downfall that it can manage so that it doesn't flood its own units or flood its neighbors. But you're right, it'll draw a line on Clark Road and that's it, and it won't go any further than that. Thank you.
Were there other thoughts for the meeting? So right now I have that we want to talk about the community benefits list, talking about some of the design for the senior development in particular, property management, and thinking about the power effects for residents, watershed impact, stormwater, and then AMI, ways to determine rent.
One thing that, and I can help with this, is it would just be really helpful for me if we could get a list of all the entities involved in this, so that I can things are kind of floating around my head. Like, I want to know that we have potential management property, we have the developers, DJR Architecture, Lincoln Avenue Capital, we have the city involved, we have Washington County involved, we have the road commission involved, we have potentially a river watershed, things like that. Is there a good breakdown somewhere that I could see, or could we kind of work on that so I can just kind of make sure I have a mental picture of everybody that is involved, all the stakeholders?
I can see what I can put together.
Okay, yeah, I would.
That doesn't exist currently, but we can put something together.
I would really appreciate that. It would just help me visually see who is involved.
Andrew?
If there's not a motion to extend, this meeting's over in 1 minute.
Motion to extend this meeting for 20 more minutes.
Possibly.
Just because I have one thing I wanted to add to this. We can vote on that.
I'd second that. Do I-
It's already second.
So all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we talk next time about, maybe this is a silly question, about the affordability and how that is administered over the lifespan of the development, and how it is ensured that the people living in this development are those who might need it. Like, is this something that somebody would need to apply to live in? I mean, it's not, there's certainly currently more affordable housing available in Ipsy. We've talked about this. It's like the area median income doesn't really, it's very different across the county. So I'm interested in learning more about what structures are there in place to ensure that it stays affordable and that it benefits those who need it. And maybe talk more about that AMI thing. I know that that's based on Washington County, it's decided by the state, but are those numbers flexible to make this actually affordable for people who live in Ipsy right now?
Yeah, I see these kind of like under like a specific topic of just talking about the affordability So those are like capital A, so little a affordability, kind of in general, so. And have probably. A couple things under that. Yep. Any other things? A motion to adjourn.
Prior to adjourning, I just want to make sure the committee is aware of OMA regulations. You cannot meet with quorum of members of this committee. If you do so, you'd be a violation of the Open Meetings Act, and you're personally liable. So you cannot meet, you cannot discuss or deliberate over email. So be very careful that you do not do any of that.
With each other.
Among each other, yes. You cannot.
And let's say you end up at Bellflower having dinner with, and 4 of you or 5 of you are there. That's not illegal.
Yeah, that's
But
a,
if you start discussing the CBO meeting while you're at Bellflower with your family, that would be. So
With our anybody.
no. So like, so if you're there with your family and then you go. Yeah, then you go chat with Desiree and Alice and Tigwin all at the same time about it. That's where you could get into trouble.
What if I run into Lisa, just Lisa and me at Bellflower, and you say,
It's best to keep your discussion here.
yes.
We can't stop you from chatting about it, obviously, but it's best to keep the discussion about this here. Definitely not on email. And just be very conscious of that because you are a public body. And thank you for bringing that up, Andrew. But
Yeah.
so like I said, you don't have to leave Bellflower or wherever you're at. If you see somebody, you can wave and say hi, but like if you start talking about this development, that's where it could get in trouble.
The OMA is silent on like social gatherings or things like that. So if you're at a bar or a restaurant or a party and you happen to see a quorum of you there, you don't all need to leave, but just don't ever talk about the CBA process.
And if some of your friends are still on to hang out, like that's not what, that's just more of a. All public bodies
So
have to be-
that's, that's in order to make sure that as much content as possibly gets discussed is in the public sphere.
Correct.
Right, to make
It-
it transparent.
Yeah, it's a sunshine law that was created in 1976. It's to make sure that everything is done above board and that the public has the ability to view any discussion the government is taking in developing policies.
There have been lawsuits.
Does it, if I could ask, does that include letters to the editor?
Where certain bodies have got together 2 at a time and schemed on how they were going to proceed once they got to the meeting. And they were prosecuted for that. So you can't meet outside and say, hey, I'm gonna vote this way, do this, and then just go in the meeting and do it. That's a violation of the OMA.
It's a $500 fine each for each violation.
Correct.
Of the
That-
state.
That you would
We
be,
don't.
that you would be personally liable.
who does that?
Question?
In the city right
A
now.
lot of people do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, speaking it, I've worked at the regents of the University of Michigan before, who have a history of meeting outside of their meetings, then becoming and voting unanimously on things with no discussion. Items worth millions and millions of dollars, so you know that they're talking about that outside of their meeting, and nobody's been able to stop them. So I want to know what the mechanism is for making me pay $500 for my thing, so I can get them to do it.
The
Well-
courts,
Courts,
yeah.
and I still don't understand the regent rules.
They're,
I don't get those.
it's the OMA rules. They just have an $18 billion endowment, so they can do whatever they want.
We just recommend that everyone with the city follow the law.
Well,
Could I ask a question? Am I allowed to write a letter to the editor of a newspaper?
That sounds like it's a Mr. Barr question.
You can as a,
Did I get an answer?
that would not violate the Open Meetings Act. If
Thank you.
as an Independent office holder wrote a letter.
Can I ask one meeting related question? You all spent time discussing the meeting schedule. And I also want to really thank everybody for their interest and time in this. I think it's important for me to be at these meetings as well. But I have a conflict with March 18th And I'm wondering if it's acceptable for me to attend virtually. And it's a kind of a question for Mr. Halenga, but also for this committee, if they would be open to me attending virtually for that one meeting.
There's nothing, no legal parameter saying that you could not participate virtually.
I don't want to hold the committee up. It's a conflict, I just can't really flip forward.
I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, I'd be fine. Yeah, I'd prefer that than having to try to find another date.
Yeah.
Or to have you not be there so we can't ask you questions.
Great, thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Anything else? Good. Well, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second. Or just we, else need to make a motion.
You can just say so moved and somebody else say support.
So moved. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Bye-bye.
Oh, it is.